to ask you, Wallace, is why did you decide to ruin your life and accept the appointment by Governor Rick Perry? But seriously, when he came to you and said, I want to pick you for this job, what did he tell you about it, and why did you accept?
Thank you. It was a huge honor to be asked to serve by Governor Perry as a regent. I thought what would the opportunity be to devote 6 years of your life in an effort to make changes and positive improvements to something. And the UT system opportunity I thought was unique because we only have 9 regents. So myself plus 4 others, we have a majority, and you would think that with those numbers you could get a lot done. I was wrong. We have gotten a lot done, but we haven't been able to deal with some of the major issues that are necessary to really help us evolve. But Governor Perry, basically, he was very simple. He didn't pretend to know, the specifics of why the problems existed, but he was very insistent that this was student debt loads were too high, the cost of education was too high, we needed more accessibility, and he wanted higher quality. He wanted us to be efficient with our funds and better managed, and he didn't try to tell us how to do it, but he wanted it done, and he wanted to promise that we would be independent and not bend to the pressures that would undoubtedly come our way. So it was a huge opportunity, and it was the best way. It was the best opportunity I figured I would ever receive to give something back to my state, and hopefully put us in a better place in the future than we are now. And I have children, so it means a lot to me.
And did you know, I mean, obviously there were some things that you wanted to fix, but did you have any idea that you would get in there and see what you ended up seeing when you first got in?
No, I came in with a completely open mind, and by nature I ask a lot of questions. I mean, I think that's how most people learn, by asking questions. And you can choose to sit there and be fed what other people want you to read and to learn, or you can ask questions and bring all your personal life experiences to the table. We all have different backgrounds, and so I started focusing on the things that I thought were important. What I found was that I would focus on them, but then I really didn't get to vote on them. We didn't even get to talk about them. And so I turned my attention to, well, why can't we as a board, why can't we as individuals who have fiduciary duties, why can't we do our job? And so I began looking for the barriers that prevented us from making progress. And all these things, for the most part, they came to all the board. I mean, whether or not it was the law school, it was something that happened and came to us. Everybody got the information, but I would continue to ask questions, and I insisted on having good answers. Same thing with most of these issues. They would come even to the public, and I would ask questions because that's my role, to make sure we get to the bottom of it. And finally, at the end, once I figured out why we couldn't really participate fully as fiduciaries, I had to turn my attention to the big pink building, the Capitol, and it became pretty obvious what was taking place, and why we were being attacked so harshly.
One of the things that I've experienced in the legislature that you've kind of talked about was that, when I went down there, I thought we were going to have honest discussions, have honest debates about different issues, and I was kind of under the illusion that I would be able to go down there and convince these people they've just been wrong. And look, I'm bringing you a new message. Fact is, they knew the message. They just reject conservative principles. Who were the players down there who said, this isn't your job. You shouldn't be worrying about this. We're not going to take a vote on it, or we're not going to bring it up, or we don't want to hear the research. Did you have any allies down there originally or anywhere through the process? Did you have any friends at all?
Yeah, I have a few friends. We had Chairman Gene Powell, who rolled off the board this year, was terrific. He was steadfast. He was resolute. He allowed the regents to do their jobs. And Brenda Pavich and Alex Scramberg came on in my same class, and they've been terrific. So I'll stick with they've been real stewards and fiduciaries that y'all could be proud of.
So was most of the pressure, the walls that went up around you, was from the legislature or from special interests? Is that what you would say?
Yes. So basically, the pressure came from the politicians. I mean, I had no idea how this system worked, but we put in our request for information and meetings, and when we did that, much of it had to do with our flagship, because it's our flagship, right? I mean, it's a super important institution to the state, and when the information got over to the university somehow would let a few politicians know, and if you asked about the wrong topic, if you even touched it, it was like a third rail. There would be an article that would show up in the San Antonio Express or the Statesman, or Senator Zaffirini would make some condescending comment to the press about how this group is anti-intellectual or whatever, and so there was a fight that was going on that I didn't even understand that had started. I'm asking questions, and then we're getting smacked, and it always seemed over the top. I never could understand it. I mean, you would think, and I know you would be excited if we found extra money in the university and eliminated waste and increased access and quality, but this group didn't seem to have any interest in us playing in the sandbox at all.
And that was, from the other side, I will tell you that it was funny to me to see all of a sudden people, like you said, Senator Zaffirini, who I kind of viewed as very quiet in the process, not really out there. All of a sudden you had certain individuals in the legislature who were right on top of this. I mean, like sitting at their desk, pushing their button, but not much more. All of a sudden we're just instantly amped up over something that we didn't understand. I remember when it went down, but I just wanted to share a quick story with you guys about the UT flagship that I experienced. And do any of y'all remember the talk I gave about, it was a number of years ago, where I talked about how they try and pull you away from your supporters and how the establishment tries to flip you around and influence the process. In the first week of us getting down to Austin in my freshman session, UT came out and paid for a incredible hotel spread for a conference for every legislator. And I actually did not go because I didn't want to have to report it as receiving a gift, but it was free football tickets, it was t-shirts, hats. I mean, it was just unbelievable amount of stuff. And, not having gone to UT or, finishing a four-year university myself, it was all kind of new to me. But it was amazing to me the amount of people who that was their one issue. They didn't care about anything else, but it was like, we have got to protect this institution for whatever reason. And then you come along and start asking some questions, and we start to see why certain individuals would be more invested about keeping business as usual. But did you know that they were going to come out? Because originally when Chairman Pitts came out with his stuff, did you know that was going to happen before it did? Did you have any heads up? Because I'll be honest, like they kept it completely away from Jonathan Stickland that they were going to try anything legislatively like they did.
The first time that the whole impeachment came to my attention and the public's attention was when Dan Branch, as chair of higher ed in the House, went on the record saying that he had asked his staff to look into what the process is for impeachment. And I was like, wow, really? But I just kept asking questions because it was very obvious that the effort was in an attempt to chill chill us from doing our job. And either I quit, because I can't do my job, or I'm going to keep going. And I took a sworn oath, and so I decided to keep going. And then there was a period of time in the spring of 13 where it was just such an outsized reaction to asking questions about good governance and about management that I couldn't quite get my head around it. And then I think there was a point in time where I kind of figured out how admissions worked. And there had been, and I don't know how much you want me to go into this, but the demand for admissions at UT Austin in real and nominal terms have gone up tremendously since 1998. We've got the top 10% rule. The class is approximately 7,200 students. 75% gets filled from top 10% or automatic admits. 10% is from out of state, international. And so you've got 12, 15, 17%, depending on the year, that actually is discretionary. And our state's grown. The price of private institutions and out-of-state higher ed university costs have gone through the roof. And so, University of Texas is a bargain relative to a lot of these, and it became extremely valuable. And so I've kind of focused in on the idea that, well, maybe this admissions is the thing. And so I decided to exercise my right as a private citizen. I used the Texas Information Act, and I made a request to get the letters and communications by and between President Powers and his office and any of the politicians over the last 4 years or 5 years. And you would have thought I'd set off a atomic explosion, and it was within 3 weeks that they had begun the impeachment.
I mean, they accused you of attacking the university. That was one of the themes that I heard over and over is, oh, he's just attacking the university. He's here to tear it down. He's here to make us look bad. Can you address that accusation?
Well, I mean, it's all a matter of perspective. If any organization, if you worry only about your reputation and you don't deal with the underlying issues of integrity, then your reputation will soon follow. I mean, this is a big school. It's a big organization.
You said $15 billion, right?
Well, the system
Yes.
is. UT Austin is $2.5 billion in annual operating expenses. But for me to want to ask a question about why is it we have 24,000 employees for 50,000 students? Why is that? And I still don't know the answer to that. 24,000 employees. But the fact of me trying to do my job and improve efficiency, and then the other side makes a big deal about it and gets a bunch of public attention brought to it, that's not me making us look bad. That's them making us look bad, and for other reasons. And so I just completely dismiss that
So
accusation.
would it be fair to say that, I mean, you weren't going out specifically targeting certain legislators to try and find something that may or not be there? You started to figure stuff out just based on the reaction that you got off of simple requests that didn't even start there. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's never been any attacks on any legislature or specific person. This is a systemic failure of management, and we just need to get it fixed, and we need to bring the integrity back to the process so the people of Texas and the applicants and the kids know when they apply that it's a fair play, it's a level playing field. It's very simple.
And when the impeachment stuff came through, can you talk a little bit about the offer that Speaker Straus made to you to drop the charges? Can you talk about that?
Sure. Now, in all candor, I mean, he denies that he made it, but it was very clear to me. I mean, I came out of a meeting in Austin, and my phone had gone off, and I called back, and it was Governor Perry's chief of staff, and the Transparency Committee's report, the Rusty Hardin report, was pending but not yet submitted, and she called me, and I called her back, and she said, "Listen, I got to tell you what happened," and this on a Friday afternoon, and Joe Straus had taken it upon himself to walk over to the governor's office, and I believe he was in Australia, and met with the chief of staff and basically said, "Hey, I've reviewed the report. I've got an advanced copy. There's 7 reasons, impeachable offenses, if you will. 3 are criminal. 2 of those are misdemeanor, and 1 is a felony. And I thought the governor should know. And he left, and then within the hour, his chief of staff, I believe his last name is Jesse Ann Sarah.
Correct.
Called her back.
Great guy.
Yeah. Called her back and said, basically, we can make this go away if the governor will just make him resign. And she said, well, he's not gonna ask him to resign. And so that was the conversation she related, and I said, I'd like you to thank the governor very much for his continuing support, and you can tell the governor, and you can tell Speaker Joe Straus that I'm not going to resign. And I just thought it was deplorable. I mean, the idea that they would hang a false accusation over my head in an effort to coerce me to leave the board and coerce the governor, for that matter, to ask me to step down, I thought that was terrible.
Yeah, and Governor Perry stuck through you and what you were trying to do through this entire process, did he not?
Yeah, Governor Perry has been he's been a stalwart and extremely
on this issue.
He's been let me say this: all my experience about any politician that I mentioned today are my personal interactions, if you will, and Governor Perry. At no political advantage to himself, at great cost actually, continued to support me, support my efforts at doing the right thing to help the University of Texas and to improve the system all the way through. And I thought it was a real sign of his character.
What can you tell us about the Kroll Report, the investigation, and what actually came of that that has now made it into the public?
So I don't know how much y'all know actually about the Kroll Report, but we had, so when I made that information request for the letters by and between the president's office and the politicians, I believe I got 88 actual physical letters that existed at the time. And based on those letters, we had an internal review of admissions at UT Austin. And that was led by our general counsel at the system. And that went on for a number of months, and ultimately it came out and it showed that if you had a letter from one of these politicians, if you had one of these letters, then you had somewhere close to 300% greater odds of getting in than if you were just part of the general public. That's 300% is pretty big. At the University of Illinois, they had an 8% differential when they had their scandal, and virtually the whole board and the president had to resign. Here, nothing happened after that, and I was appalled. I made my case. I didn't get any movement from our chairman, and so it languished. And then if it were not for the courage of one whistleblower who came through the door and who said, basically, he's right, but it's worse than you think. Based on that, Chancellor Cigaroa, our former chancellor, showed incredible courage, and it was his and his alone. It was his call. Ordered a separate independent investigation. We had that investigation. It went on from, let's say, August through January, and the report came, and it found that the president and his chief of staff had misled us, misled the people, misled the general counsel, and that abuses had taken place. And but the irony of it is our board never got to speak to the investigators. We paid your money, $400,000 for this report, but we never got to speak to the investigators. We never got to ask any questions. And the board, if you can go back and look at the record, the board has never publicly, really even not even privately, have either discussed the Kroll Report, discussed the admissions scandal. We never talked about it. And I don't know, if we don't talk about that, what do we talk about? I mean, that's important.
What are you talking about right now? I mean, what are they saying is more important? I mean, we're joking about it, but I'm serious.
Yeah, it's not that anything's more important. We have this habit of and this goes back to the accountability. I don't know how you can have accountability unless somebody pays some meaningful price for bad behavior. And we have this desire not to embarrass one of our universities. And so what we do is we say we fixed it and we moved on. And we cheer about it. You know, we've moved on, we're great again. But we don't, you know, if you don't deal with the underlying, you know, rot, it just doesn't go away.
And I want to, you kind of touched on this, but I think this problem is bigger than just this specific problem, and that's this whole idea of an internal investigation. Can you talk about the problems with that? I mean, we got lucky that someone had courage and brought in on the Kroll investigation, but talk about internal investigations in general.
Sure.
If you will.
Yeah, and by the way, just because the whistleblower came in, you know, I as I said, I tip of the hat to Chancellor Cigarola because he had the courage to order the investigation, which was very unpopular among those that were against the, you know, changing the status quo. You know, the university, I went to the University of Texas. I've got kids there. My wife went there. Obviously, I've spent a lot of time in recent years caring for the university and continue to do so. But the reality of it is we are a government agency. University of Texas is part of a government agency. And there is, and people can dispute that and say it's not true, but you know, I've talked to enough people that say it is. There is a climate of fear within maybe all government agencies to where people are afraid to bring wrongdoing forward. They're afraid to say, you know, this person or that person is doing something that's illegal because there's absolutely no upside in it for them. You know, there's no great trustworthy system in place that allows that to happen. And so what's happened is I get calls, I get anonymous letters frequently from people coming to me asking me to help because they think that I'll be willing to look into it. And I am. I mean, people bring me concerns, they do. But the long story short is, I think to a certain extent, it's futile for us to effectively investigate ourselves, just like it has proven futile for, you know, some of the Benghazi issue, if you will. You know, so I've discussed this with you privately. I mean, I think there is a genuine need for an inspector general role at the UT system to where we have an independent, authorized, empowered person or persons who can help us hold ourselves accountable, because I have not been impressed.
We're going to start taking some questions from the audience, if you guys have any, but I want to tell you something real quick. We kind of had a joke going back and forth down in Austin this last session of which person does the media and the establishment hate more this week, and it kept going back and forth between me and you. No, they definitely hate you more right now, but that was good. Questions from the audience? Yes, right here. So the question is, can you tell us who the bad guys are so we can attack them on social media? That's valid.
I think Jonathan knows who they are.
I'll tell you.
I think he can tell you.
In fact, there's a gentleman that will help us take care of this problem. If you haven't met Bo French back here, can you stand up, Bo? There's a guy that you need to know if you don't know him right now. Yes, sir. Right here. Are you still a regent?
I am a regent until February of 17. I've got a little bit. That'll go by in a heartbeat.
Real quick, would you do it again? Oh, yes, sir.
Is there any reason why
Well, not only can there's ongoing litigation on that right now from the press who is trying to get it, and and
I will tell you this too, from a legislative standpoint, there have been a number of us who have asked to see different areas of it, and the amount of some of it has been disclosed to a certain senator who's looked at it a lot. But I will tell you, they are making people sign all kinds of confidentiality agreements, and you will never speak of this, you will never do anything off of it. So there's been a lot of legal games back and forth, even with members of the legislature that are supposed to have special privileges on state agencies that have still not felt like. There's many of us who feel like we still haven't gotten everything we need.
Final question. The three people who you said supported you, why didn't they go after them? Why did they pick you? And why didn't these people stand up and get up on their hind legs and really make noise?
My dad said it maybe because I'm not very smart, and so they went after me instead. But I think it was just the questions that I asked. I mean, these other three people, they voted right on the right issues. They were supportive. The chairman in particular, who had authority to make sure I had access. And but I was the one that made the request for these communications between the politicians and the president, and that was a mistake in their eyes. And so they came after me to make an example of me.
And let me say this too, typically the establishment that I've seen work in that they don't have the winning message, okay? To go out there and try and sell to the public that, hey, this guy's a bad guy because he asked questions and wanted some answers, that doesn't sell. So what they typically do, the establishment from my experience has been, they focus on who they consider the ringleader and they try and punish him to discourage anyone else that's supportive from behind. That's why they came after me and Matt Schaefer in the last election. That's why they're coming after Molly White and Matt Rinaldi in this election. And so they typically, because they don't have the winning message, will zero in on one target, try and take them out to discourage anyone else that's supportive behind.
People like Jonathan or Connie, they self-identify. They show up, they raise their hand, they ask questions, and then they want legitimate, truthful answers. And that's the self-identification. And then the crowd who moves with the establishment will move away from them. And then there's a process. I mean, it's just like a playbook. Then they go after them, they attack them, they tear them down, ridicule them. So that's how it works.
Real quick, Deborah, and let's get rapid fire here.
Okay. First, thank you for your service. Governor Perry appointed me to the State Bar Board of Directors. So I have a healthy respect for attorneys, even though I'm not one. But one thing I noticed from this event tonight is Jonathan, yourself, Connie, we have Tony Tinderholt. None of them are attorneys. We're seeing our politicians that are attorneys going after people to destroy them. And I think that's something we should consider in 2016, more people like Jonathan, more people like Connie, that are not going to do this. And being from Arlington, having people told to sit down and shut up and not answer and not ask questions is becoming a problem, and I think we should stop it.
No more lawyers. Steve?
Just out of frustration, I called the Texas agency and trying to get them to put pressure on power to leave. Got sandbagged completely, and thought the KBA should be a little bit more reasonable, but she's fully in their camp. Do you have any other pressure points we as alum and citizens can have on them disclosing?
Is there anything that they can do out there to help support you?
As I said at the beginning, it's been discouraging, but as complicated and as questions on higher ed and whatever else is out there on funding issues, and the reality of it is, if you don't have the right people in the chairs, you're never going to get the right outcomes. And so I encourage this group and each of y'all to go out there and replace the bad candidates. The candidates you thought were good that misled you and defrauded you by what they said versus what they did, they need to go.
Are you thinking of anyone in particular? I feel like...
And, you know, and you just have to replace them with people that will do what they say. And then problems can be addressed. But other than that, you know, the rest of this is nibbling at the edges because the politicians, you know, they hold the power and they hold the stick.
Let's go right here.
Two quick questions. Can a regent be lobbied?
Can a regent be lobbied?
I don't know. Well, when you say lobbied, you mean like wined and dined and stuff? Well, I'm sure that they are. I can tell you that I've made a point of not accepting anything, not one book, not one meal, nothing, and I've sought no reimbursement for any of my expenses, you know, for travel or anything, even things that I was entitled to under the law. You know, I just thought it was best that I'm a citizen volunteer, and I thought that was most appropriate. So, but you know, people, the big thing about politicians and regents is people really want to be in the club, and they don't want to be thrown out, and so they don't take the tough vote. They don't ask the hard question. They don't do sometimes what they should because they don't want to be ridiculed, or their husband or wife, spouse is hearing bad things in the neighborhood about them, and you know they're embarrassed. I mean, you just have to have a certain amount of defiance that you're going to do what you think is the right thing to do, and that's it. And but sometimes you don't get to stay in the club.
Let's go to Aaron, then we're going to come over here to you, Tom.
Wallace, you and Jonathan represent a rarity in politics today, which is guys that are willing to stand up regardless of opposition. Most of the elected officials, one right here in our backyard, which you mentioned earlier, they flip at the slightest opportunity to sell out. What do you say to politicians like that who just don't have the intestinal fortitude to back up? And you paid a very high sacrifice for doing the right thing. So I know you have a very personal, I'm sure, opinion of those types of politicians.
You know, the reality of it is that politicians, my experience is they tell you whatever it is they're going to say, and either they do it or they don't. And if they don't do what they said, somehow there's this really complicated explanation on why it wasn't going to work, and
You just don't understand.
You don't understand, and
There's a bigger picture.
you know, it's just, I mean, you know, Connie Burton, I went and met with her during the last session, and I was like in awe. I mean, she was just tough and you know, sticking to her values and what she said, and she looked at me like going, "This isn't that hard." I mean, this is what we said. This is what I'm going to do, and I'm like going like that. So I think all you can do, I mean, there's no use in trying to persuade these people once they go down that path. I mean, all you can do is replace them, put them back in the private sector, get somebody new.
Tom?
Wallace, the practice of tenure professorship. I dealt with some of that and talked about it when my son was going down to UT and when I served on a board over at A&M. Is that anything that Regents can alter, or does that have to take a legislative decision? These left-wing professors have burned in and they're there. How can we alter some of that without protecting from the right kind of job?
How can we protect the state from liberal professors
Well, yeah.
that are there forever?
So on the issue of tenure, it is definitely a board issue. I mean, that's underneath our purview, and we can make changes as we see fit. What I did not understand when I came on the board is that tenure in Texas is a property right. It's a property right. And while we're a at-will work state, I mean, if Jonathan is a tenured professor and he does something horrible, I mean, it's still tough to get his tenure back. I mean, it's brutal. And it's a process that was set up years ago, and boards have allowed it to continue. You know, that's a deep pit trying to get in there. I don't think it makes sense to try to get rid of it, but I am in favor of alternate plans. I mean, there are great professors that we want to have stay at Texas, come to Texas, and do their research and teach our students. And they don't necessarily, I don't think, want tenure, the golden handcuffs that limit them to, and at MD Anderson, which is one of our institutions, our tenure, I want to say it's 7 years. So it's really like a contract. We're going to get a great young professor, and we're going to have him under contract for 7 years during his prime, or her prime. And then at the end of it, if they have done great, they're a free agent. They're available to the free market to go after. If we want to get them, we'll have to pay more. Maybe we don't want them. Maybe they go on. But there's other ways to do it. But have we ever talked about it on our board? No.
Right here, sir.
Wallace, I don't want to leave the conversation without your characterization of the media's role in your whole situation. The truth is the people are informed to some degree by good politicians and their own efforts. But if the media is fundamentally making the water muddy and making it impossible for the average and normal person to have a clear understanding.
Let me translate. A guy shoots a lion and everyone freaks out. You uncover a scandal and no one talks about it.
Yeah, so in truth, it's a great question. And I got to say, the thing that was most frightening to me, truly, was the fact that once all this started going and there's information available and and people were talking about it, that the press was just missing in action. They are not all of them. Some of them were good, but the majority of them were lazy. They were fed the information from the wrong side, and they would just write whatever it was they were given. And when I say frightening, it's frightening because we all count heavily on the Fourth Estate to keep the government honest. And if they're going to be Pravda, and they're not going to be Breitbart, we're in trouble. And
let's give them a little bit of credit. Some of them also are the food critic for the paper, and they have a lot of other responsibilities too. Right back here.
I can't.
I'm going to leave the stage now.
I don't know if Governor Abbott is supporting us. No, and nor have I. No, that's it.
Isn't that one way that we could help a little bit? I mean, could we not be sending messages to our current governor to say, hey, what are you doing? Governor Perry did this. Why aren't you speaking out in favor and protecting somebody that's doing the best they can to protect? Would that not be?
I think any time you want to hold any of your elected officials accountable or tell them what you want to do, I think it's an appropriate time to do so. Always.
Yes, sir.
I'm curious about the personal cost that it took on you. Did it affect your business or did it affect your personal life when you were doing all this?
Yes. I have it's kind of funny. It's really immaterial to me, but just a sign of how far they will go. I have what's called a wetland. One of my businesses is something called a wetland mitigation bank, where I create wetlands, and for anybody that has to destroy wetlands as part of a U.S. Army Corps contract. And I've had this business for, I don't know, almost 15 years. And when the politicians came after me, they had people trolling in my neighborhood, looking for dirt on me, looking for dirt on my business, going through any lawsuit I'd ever been through, looking for information. And in the last session, in the budget bill that was passed, I forgot where it is in the bill, but buried deep in the bill are a few lines there to where if any state agency wants to purchase mitigation credits from, like, my bank, if you will, this business I have, they have to come through the Legislative Budget Board. And if they don't approve it, then it doesn't happen. And it was immaterial to me financially one way or the other, but it's just a sign of the punitive nature of some of these people in power. And but my friends are still my friends, and and those that might have been near the rim, have self-declared, and that's okay. But my family's been very supportive and loving and strong, and and as long as they're okay, I'm okay. So it's been okay.
We got time for one more question. Yes, sir. Can you be reappointed?
I could be reappointed, but the odds of that are probably so infinitesimally small as to not consider it. It's up to the governor.
Well, that's it. Let's give this guy a round of applause.